It's a stall. Well, good morning. Yep. On this magnificent day when all is well with the world, finally the world's got its right order. Really great to welcome you to worship this morning. I welcome people who are here in person with us at the Avenue, and also those who are tuning in online via our YouTube channel. It really is good to be together. And I didn't wear my scarf last week, but I couldn't resist this morning. And I actually brought a little friend with me. And he's a very special little friend, because look what happens when you shake hands with him. And the good part is, once he's started, you can't stop him. He does his whole routine. I don't know, I've had this for so long, I couldn't tell you who gave it to me. Well, Jem's sitting down in disgust. Bobby wanted to come and sing the song. So he sang it for me on the phone. Oh, good. I'm also really delighted this morning to welcome our guest speaker, Jenni Georgiadis. So Jenni is a long-term friend and colleague. And Jenni, really appreciate the fact you're giving us 2 Sundays, today and next Sunday. And the fee goes up considerably on the second Sunday. One of those back-ended contracts, you know. As we begin, and as our community approaches the date of the Voice referendum, I think it's increasingly important that we acknowledge that we gather on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We thank them for their care and management of this land over many, many thousands of years, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. I did think when I got up this morning that it would have been wise for me to pre-record all that I was going to say this morning, because I might get to the end of the service okay, but if I don't, well, bad luck. Rosemary's going to come and lead us in our first song, God, You Touch the Earth with Beauty. Thanks, Rosemary.
Chris, well done. Chris missed his train, so he's done very well to get here in time. Rightio, off we go. God, you touch the earth with beauty, make my heart anew. With your spirit recreate me, pure and strong and true. Like your springs and running waters, make me crystal blue. Like your rocks of towering grandeur, make me strong and sure. Like your dancing waves in sunlight, make me glad and free. Like the stillness of the pine trees, upright let me be. Like the arching of the heavens, let my thoughts above turn my dreams to noble action, ministries of love. God, you touch the earth with beauty, make my heart anew. Keep me by your spirit, pure and strong and true.
I was thinking as I was reading the words of the song, that's a very, very large image of a bee, isn't it? I don't know what the bee equivalent of arachnophobia is, but I hope no one suffers from beeophobia or whatever it is, because that would be very confronting. But, it's a photo that Alison Manuel took. Alison is one of the people that tunes in online, lives in Port Augusta, one of our regular participants, and that's one of her photos. It's a great photo, but it is a bit sort of in your face, isn't it? But anyway, it's going to be there right through the service. So enjoy. I want to just invite you into this sacred space, I guess. I want to invite you to be present by intention this morning, to take a moment now to still the mind and quiet the soul as we feel our way into the experience of the holy, into which Jenni will invite us later on. As you take a few deep centering breaths, you may like to use the words of Thich Nhat Hanh as a prompt. Breathing in, I calm body and mind. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is the only moment. You might want to repeat that to yourself and maybe even smile as you do so, and just breathe and be present in this moment as Tim comes and lights the Christ candle for us. Breathing in, I calm body and mind. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is the only moment. Welcome again to this time of worship. I'm going to have an opportunity to just sort of talk about or share what's going on both in the life of the church, excuse me, and maybe in your own lives or the lives of the people that you love and know. So yeah, in terms of what's going on in the life of the church, first of all, next Sunday, as I said, Jenni will be with us next Sunday, and yeah, that's right. I think that we'll show the slide for that later, but Jenni's theme next Sunday will be respect, so she'll be back again then. And are there any sort of pastoral notes that we want to sort of be aware of that you'd like us to take note of this morning? Anything happening that either celebratory or things that we need to be aware of?
We have Robin and Julie today.
Yeah, so Robin's had a shoulder reconstruction and Julie's had a knee reconstruction or knee replacement, and Treen's recuperating well from her knee replacement, and you know, and they don't even play football.
Maybe think of Sue and John, Sue's mum being in hospital. So it's been a busy week for Sue and her mum.
Yep.
Oh, it hasn't been very well this week.
Okay. Yeah. We'll pass on our thoughts to her.
Ros next door is just pottering along, but
She's doing okay.
sort of doing okay. Yep.
Life will be very different for her. Well, Danny has something to share with us, and so why don't you come and do that now, Danny? And then after Danny's done that, we'll have a greeting time, so you can invite people to greet each other as well, if you like.
So just really quickly, everyone, Brian, welcome.
Thank you.
Obviously last Sunday we had our special general meeting where we asked Brian to come and be our new ministry leader from January next year, 2nd of January next year. Brian was free this week and he said he'd come along and say hello to everyone. So Brian, welcome to Surrey.
Yep. Cool.
Sorry, welcome to Hartwell. There you go. Some things going on, don't they? Welcome to Hartwell.
What did I say?
Wonderful to have you along today. And just so everyone knows, across the course of the week, all of the paperwork's now been done. So everything's now been completely finalised. And so, Brian, we'll start as Mr. Leader in a second. Brian, would you like to just say hello to people? And
Yeah, just quickly, I know a few names and yep.
Talking to here, otherwise anyone who's
Yes,
on the thing just
indeed.
cannot hear you.
Welcome. Yeah, just really lovely to be with you guys this morning. To be completely transparent, I'm a Hawthorn supporter, so just get that out of the way. Yeah, I'll be well supported. But yeah, really thank you. I'm really excited to be a part of this community outside of my kind of formal role. And it's been a lovely journey, right from the kind of working through with the search committee They asked me some really difficult questions, Andrew particularly twice at different times. But it was a lovely generative process, as well as then meeting with the board. And ultimately, it's Meryl's fault. She was the one who sent the email to start the conversation. But yeah, really, really excited to be with you guys. And so I'll start from January, but I'll probably be around a few Sundays between now and then. We head off to India as a family on 1st of December, which will be really, really exciting. But yeah, lovely to be with you and be part of your journey as you're part of my journey going forward. So, and thanks to Danny and Cole, they've done a lot of work, and Cole particularly constantly on the phone with me during work times, running out of, to call out of meetings and things. So, and I know Cole can't be here today. So, look forward to getting to know you guys a bit better.
And so Brian will stay around for a coffee afterwards. So please feel free to have a chat with him and get acquainted with him. And of course, any Sunday you'd like to come, please feel welcome.
Thanks, Dan.
Now I'm just saying, guys, you've got an opportunity now to say hello to each other and catch up with each other.
Congratulations to all work. It's good to you see the other kids are super brilliant. They'd be a delight with this
Okay, let's feel free to grab a cup of coffee if you'd like to. We're about to move into communion. You would imagine, I'm sure, that one of the simplest things a minister has to do is to introduce communion. But, you know, because, I mean, after all, there are so many, there are written liturgies you can draw on, there's so many resources you can call on, and, you know, it should be pretty easy to put together a communion introduction. But I have to admit that I find it an increasingly difficult task to introduce communion, because it confronts me with the tension between my belief and my unbelief, between my experience and my reason, if you like. I don't believe that there's anything magical about communion. I don't believe that it's a moment of transubstantiation or consubstantiation or any other substantiation for that matter. But I do somehow experience it as a mystical means of grace, and I don't know why. It's rather like that line from one of Leonard Cohen's songs, I know that I'm forgiven, but I don't know how I know. In the midst of this, unsubstantiated confusion, I happened to read Nick Cave's Red Hand File number 242. Does anyone else read Nick Cave's Red Hand Files? They are magnificent. Some of them are, so what was that about? But there are some gems in them. And it spoke to me like an introduction to communion might speak to me. So I thought maybe it would do the same to you. So I'm going to read it this morning, not as an introduction to communion, but rather as a backdrop to communion. And as I read, I want to invite you in your table groups, whenever you are ready, to share communion together as an act of deep hospitality and as an experience of grace. The reading goes for about 3 minutes, so there's no rush. Just at any point as I'm reading, feel free to share communion together. And as you share, it's my prayer that Nick Cave's words might touch your spirit as they did mine. Cave writes his Red Hand Files in response to questions that his readers send to him. And this particular one was written in response to the 2 questions that are on the screen there. One from Josh in Chicago, who says, I just listened to your interview with Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury. I can't work out whether you believe or not. Did you have a conversion? And another from Sharon in Marseille in France. I feel like hell. Any words of help? Dear Josh and Sharon, I have never experienced what one might call a conversion. At times I wish I had, as it may have made things a little easier. What I have experienced is a slow and gradual flowering of a religious impulse that has always been inside me, in my blood and bones. What this amounts to is a heightened receptiveness or susceptibility to the strangeness of things, the mysterious, the holy, the absurd. combined with an instinctive resistance toward what often feels like the ploddingly rational. I'm quite happy to admit that this nostalgic and aesthetic attachment to something that may not exist might be a kind of sentimental softness of mind, or worse, emotional. But I must also acknowledge that this feeling has always been with me. God as a destination as strong and real as love. And it would seem perverse to deny it or not follow it where it wishes to take me. This is not to say I am ever completely free of the grip of my unbelieving self. Far from it. In fact, as my belief grows stronger, so too do the stabilizing demons of doubt. And I would say that it is this wild dance between belief and doubt that is the very essence of religiousness, and creativity too, for that matter. I have found within its push and pull an extraordinarily fertile and imaginative betweenness, where the interesting work gets done. Still, Josh, I live for the moments my disbelief loosens its hold and allows me to experience that lovely lightness of spirit, that elevated oneness with things that feels like God, that feels like love. Maybe in the end, my disbelief will win the battle for my soul, but I hope not. That would feel like a terrible diminishment, like relinquishing the most interesting part of oneself. And so, like art, like love, I attend to that religious impulse in order to keep the spiritual flame alive and vital. And Sharon, I am sorry to hear you are struggling. Perhaps these most beautiful words from Numbers will be of some comfort. The Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face to shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace. Love, Nick. So Helen is going to bring us a reading from the Gospel, and then Jenny is going to share with us her reflection. Thank you again, Jenny, for being with us this morning, and really look forward to hearing from you. Thanks, Helen.
I'm reading from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 21, verses 23 to 32. When he entered the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people came to him as he was teaching and said, "By what authority are you doing these things? Who gave you this authority?" Jesus said to them, "I will also ask you one question. If you tell me the answer, then I will also tell you by what authority I do these things. Did the baptism of John come from heaven, or was it of human origin?" And they argued with one another. "If we say from heaven, he will say to us, 'Why then did you not believe him?' And if we say of human origin, we are afraid of the crowd, for all regard John as a prophet." So they answered Jesus, "We do not know." And he said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things." What do you think? A man had 2 sons. He went to the first and said, "Son, go and work in the vineyard today." He answered, "I will not." But later he changed his mind and went. The father went to the second and said the same. And he answered, "I go, sir." But he did not go. Which of the 2 did the will of the father? They said, "The first." Jesus had said to them, "Truly I tell you, the tax collectors and the prostitutes are going to the kingdom of God ahead of you. For God came to you in the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him. But the tax collectors and the prostitutes believed him. And even after you saw it, you did not change your minds and believe him."
Good morning. Can you hear me? That would be awesome. I've stood on telephone books before. Oh, thank you. Hello. Yeah, it is good. Gosh, David, when you read the blessing, I started crying. Anyone else? What a beautiful blessing. Lovely. Thank you. One that truly touched me today. It's really beautiful to hear that and to sit wherever we are and what we bring in this time together here. I'm not really a stranger to this building. I was thinking back a long, long time ago when Julie Adams was my supervisor, one of my supervisors in ministry, and I thought we sat in a broom cupboard. It was very small little space. We were trying to think which room it was. And I would come regularly for supervision in my days as a student. And I'm very grateful for the love and support of many communities and this one as well. So lovely to see people that I haven't touched base with for a long time. I graduated from Churches of Christ Theological College in 1999 after a very tough 5 years for me of being pulled apart and also stitched up in many ways to begin ministry, which I did at firstly at Southern Community Church of Christ, then on to Mulgrave at the college there, and moved on to do 10 years as chaplain at Toorak College in Mount Eliza. So, what's happened in the last few years? Well, I crawled out of Toorak College, literally. I was very burnt out. Yes, I was going to say, you're an old girl like me. It was hard work. Chaplaincy was a good fit for me, very good fit. And I have a teaching background prior to pastoral ministry. And then took my spiritual direction training. I trained as a spiritual director at Wellspring, which is not far from here. I know many of you know that place. And 1,000 students and their families, or close to 1,000 students and their families, including a very large boarding house and my own chapel, which is no longer a chapel. Trine, you'll be sad to know it's now not used as a chapel. Chaplaincy is not very, what do you call it, fashionable or something. It's gone out of sync, but it's still used as an early learning centre space. I did go, when I left Toorak College, I did go back to work for a little while, but here's a heads up, it's not good to go back for me. It wasn't good to go back. Things had changed a lot and I had changed, and COVID came and I found chaplaincy very difficult on internet and Zoom and all that sort of thing. So what have I done? Well, in that time I cared for my parents who've since passed and my mother only 4 months ago, so I'm very bereft, and I come with that, wearing that on my heart, and I think that's what the blessing was that you blessed with those words, that grieving heart. I welcomed 4 beautiful grandchildren into the family, which has kept Jimmy and I very happy, travelled, and I do see people for spiritual direction. The role that I really relished and loved was rituals, and became a celebrant. Although I did not become a civil celebrant, I retained my licence as a religious celebrant and the right to marry couples, and really have enjoyed over these years doing that, and still do, and was very distressed and upset when our Churches of Christ rites of marriage were changed for us and have not been able to marry same-sex couples legally, and have had to make some changes in that direction, although I have been able to be part of ceremonies, not been able to register them. It's been a source of pain for me, and I think for other people as well. In my own journey, I draw on the contemplative and have found great solace and energy in being able to stop. And but I've since worked out that being what you might call yourself a contemplative or drawn to that does not mean that you stop at all. It might mean that you're a little bit still, but there's a lot that goes on in us and around us. And for me, the greatest sense of the sacred is found through silence, meditation, contemplation, and that then brought a whole new dynamic for me as I moved to become involved in the Mornington Peninsula Interfaith Network and the deep ecumenism and interfaith work there in spirituality, which has been very life-giving for me. So as we come to this time, we have been asked to be still with our centering self, and I feel the stillness here. And we will spend 2 weeks together. So I'm hoping that out of today there may be some seeds that we can maybe share together, and maybe some response next week if you think things through. The gospel reading, I had to read quite a few times, which you always do. Of course, you start if you're preparing something like this. And it may not speak the first time and it may not speak the second, and so you keep reading. And if I read it slowly, and created the scene, then it becomes more real. And in Lectio Divinio way, that the two words that came were by, or the words, not mean two, but by what authority? And that sense of when we hear the word authority, what it might mean for us. By what authority? Positive, negative, doesn't mean anything. What right do you have to say these things? What brings you here to this discussion? Some of the best teachers were great at authority. Some of the ones who could command you. I like the word respect. I didn't even look up the topic for next week, so that's good. Command that respect. But as I came to thinking about what I might like to share with you, I don't know how you're feeling, but I feel as if there is so much going on around me. The voice and the referendum, Qantas, recovery and emerging from COVID. Oh, politicians retiring. Did you get that one this week? The handing down of the 4 years of the Royal Commission to Disability. And maybe you could, if you engaged in media, as you've read newspapers, as you've listened to radio, as you've watched TV, what are some things that have emerged for you? I haven't said the list. What comes to mind? Football.
The increasing violence on our streets. It just seems when suddenly we've looked at it from Queensland, we don't watch the news a lot, but you turn on now, there's increasing violence in Melbourne. We've always been able to say it's an American.
The tremendous changes in the weather that have been happening throughout the world, and the turmoil and strife that's caused. In New York now, we've seen the bushfires recently.
I think the thing for me is the calling the voice an act of law. It's stuck with me this week.
Is anybody turning off? Have you turned down the dial on too much information? Or have you turned the dial up? Down? And some up. Well, if I think about where I wanted to go, it was a little bit like, how can I keep my heart open as a person in the world? How can I keep this from... I can, of course, sort of stick my head in the sand and say, I'm over it. It's just way too much. I can't bear anymore. Look, things haven't gone well in the last few months, been pretty stressful, and I don't need more and more and more stress to come on top of already what I'm feeling quite stressed out by. And so there is that sense anyway of how much can I bear? It's a good word, isn't it? How much is too much? How much can we listen to? And I can fully understand those that are saying, I'm going to completely turn off. Go away, turn it off. But I think on a spiritual level, or on a level of what all that means about the sacred is that we really can't turn off. We can take care of ourselves when we hear things, but I'm not sure as beloved community and faith community that we are to turn off, in the sense that we have to remind ourselves that we are part of the bigger picture. We are part of community. We are part of the human family. There is oneness. There is and there's not either or. I am you, you are me. So when we cultivate this heart of empathy, when we cultivate this sense of compassion, I become very aligned with my brothers and my sisters, with who I listen to, with how they hurt, I hurt. And sometimes you sort of wish that you didn't have that oversensitive, we might call it, heart. But that's what we're actually cultivating. That's what we're actually hoping will happen, in a sense, and grow into that. Because if I see my brothers and my sisters in pain, it is also my pain. And it is also to be shared and prayed for, and candles lit, and action taken. And so there is a groundedness as we come to think about the spiritual and the sacredness of our times, because they are our times. And what might be called for here is an open heart. Now, you know, if we're going to open this up, what's going to happen? And what authority will I listen to? That's sometimes so critical to how I discern, how I know what to tune into, how I know not what to tune into. Where are the voices? There's so many voices. The church, the beloved community of faith, must listen. It mustn't stick its head in the sand. It must listen. And you do. And when you get over it, you are still listening. So the first thing I'd sort of like to say there is that cultivate an open heart. A heart that's not closed. And if you do find yourself protecting your heart, do that if it's necessary. But don't zip it up. Always get that sense of love coming from here, embodied in us, compassion deep within us. The second question, or something else I'd like to bring to us, is what do we owe to anything? What do we owe to those who are suffering? What do we owe to them? What do we bring out of this compassion? When we feel saturated with issues, when we feel like I've got all my own stuff, how can I bear to take on anything else? You know, we are called to be able to dig deep. And not only just our own selves, but as a collective. We are better together. We are better together. On the kind of more personal level, and also on the collective level, we are better together. And what do we owe to those who suffer? Well, it's perfect. David and I didn't even ring each other up to say what you're going to do for communion. I feel like hell. Well, you know that lovely saying about namaste, I bow to you. That's what you did in the blessing, David. You offered a bow to those who mourn, to those who feel like that. It was words that we understood, and they may not suit everybody, but they certainly were that respect that Nick gave to that blessing, to that lady who said she felt like hell. We must bow to that. Do you get what I mean by that? It's from here. It's not just an act, it's an attitude. It's a way of being. Because if we go back to the reading a little bit, we can see that there was those who weren't going to bow down at all. And what are you here for? And what do you know? There was that sense of authority in the way in which tell us what you think is right or wrong, but sometimes from here we have to come with that humility. and that understanding and empathy. We need the courage to examine. We need the courage to discern, as I said before, the voices and what is bearable and what we can do for others. We often say, I can't bear it anymore. But we can. We can because we are strong. And when we do, we help diminish the pain. If we close up, we're lost. I'd like to bring you this poem by Anne Hillman. It's called Uncertainty, because what I'm sort of talking about, we live in uncertain times. Every time is uncertain. My mother kept her father's World War I medals very close to her. Be very proud of them. They were a baggy tin of medals, and she kept them. And after she passed, I've held the medals, and I thought about this beautiful grandfather that I had who went off to war for king and country. His times were certainly uncertain. Every age has uncertain times, and we face them as well. So Anne Hillman writes this: uncertainty. We look with uncertainty beyond the old choices for clear-cut answers to softer, more permeable aliveness, which is every moment at the brink of death. Something new is being born in us if we let it. We stand at a new doorway, awaiting that which comes, daring to be human creatures, vulnerable to the beauty of existence. Learning to love. That's it. We have our times. We have many thresholds. We're human. We're vulnerable. And we are learning to love always till our last breath. We learn. And oh, how slow I am to keep learning of love. And how many new doorways are we invited into, and what are we waiting for, daring to be human creatures, vulnerable to the beauty of existence. For we know that in the beauty of existence there is also transience and terror. Did you hear Noel Pearson talk about hope and terror this week? We must find ways to be open, to not shut down. We're not in the business of saying, well, anyway, I think the church is not in the business of saying, well, me, or I'll talk about me. I'm not going to get involved. I can't do this. I can't bear it. I don't want to become cynical. I don't feel sure. The challenge is that I'm not so sure that we are called to that, for me. In 2 weeks, we are a nation on the threshold of uncertainty. Our times, this referendum looming large, saturated by information, emotional pleas, arguments to sway the course of history of our Indigenous brothers and sisters, whose long and sad and difficult history and their connection to the land, a timeless land that we call home, Australia. And I thought about the courage of our nation, the courage that lies in authority, the courage that has its original template in the French word cœur, or heart. David White, the poet, writes this: courage is the measure of our heartfelt participation in life. With another, with a community, a work, a future. To be a courageous person, we might not necessarily be able to go or do anything much except make conscious those things we already feel deep and then to live through the unending vulnerability of the consequences. You see, we are asked to go to the edge often. What must summon soul and spirit will bring courage. We must summon soul and spirit. Courage does inflame hope. Hope is essential. It's a spiritual quality. When I first went to Toorak College in my job interview, the final question, I'd love to hear about your final question, job interview stuff. How are you going to bring hope to Toorak College? I said, I have no idea. They said, you've got the job. And for the next 10 years, they kept bringing me pictures of hope and visible string and I don't know. Hope. I think I've got hope. Hope is in your eyes. Hope is everything here. Hope is creativity, alive to our aliveness. It nurtures our heartfelt longing that compassion and connection will bring life. Don't give up. Don't give up. When you've had enough and you can't bear anymore, I'm going to tell you to dig deep and keep going. And you will. Abandonment or giving up actually just brings despair. To watch Noel Pearson so moving in his passion this week at the press club, talking about sovereignty of Indigenous people. So I read from the Uluru Statement of the Heart last night. And in the opening lines of the Uluru Statement, it says, sovereignty is a spiritual notion. The ancestral tie between the land and the mother nature and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people, who were born therefrom, remain attached thereto, and must one day return thither to be reunited with our ancestors. That's authority. That's truth. That's clear. Oh, we complicate it. A bit like the story here in the gospel. We complicate it a bit. Who's going to go? Which son? Who said what? What he went? He's going to do it? No, he's not going to do it. I've got 3 sons. I reckon I could pick which one would say he's not going to go, and then he goes, and then the other one would feel guilty, and I know the one would go surfing and not even bother to show up at all and wouldn't care. So I got bogged down in all that sort of which one's the better one, which does that one, and whose authority, and what did John come, and then they threw him in there, and it all becomes a complicated sort of thing. And as I thought about it, and David given me the topic, just do it, and I'm the most unjust do it person. I'm like the person who will buy a book to learn how to do it because you don't really know how to do anything. And you think about this. When I thought about it, I got to the end last night when it says, do you know what it was? It was the one who changed his mind. Did you get that at the end? You probably got it way before me. No. So next week, if you dare to think about it, I might come back and talk about how we might change our mind. Attitudinal change. How that might happen. But for today, in this way, this time, in this space, what I wanted to bring was be open with your heart. When you think you've all had enough, be open, not to saturating it with negativity, but to be open, compassion. Cultivate it. Don't disconnect. Don't ever disconnect. Because if we do, we'll be lost. And if it's about just offering kindness and action and prayer and all the things that we do, then the authority of Christ the authority of what Jesus really came to do and to tell us and to show us will come through. And so what I thought about the word authority, by what authority, I wanted to read to you the other reading for today. And I'll leave you with this. The Philippians reading. Philippians 2. So maybe if you want to really, I will read slowly. By what authority? And open our hearts. If there is any encouragement in Christ, any consolation from love, any sharing in the Spirit, any compassion and sympathy, make my joy complete. Be of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord and of one mind. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility regard others as better than yourselves. Let each of you look not to your own interests, but to the interests of others. Let the same mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be exploited, but emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, being born in human likeness, and being found in human form. He humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Therefore God highly exalted him and gave him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Amen. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jenny. I feel like I need to take a deep breath. Thank you for sharing so deeply with us, Jenny. Really valued that, so thank you. Thanks to everyone for being here. Thanks to the musos for your part, and that's not finished yet, so we'll hear some more. I want to say thanks to Bo and Pradnia. They're sort of shut away these days in a little room out there, but they're doing some great work out there, so thank you to them. And again, when we finish, feel free to grab tea and coffee, something to eat and chat and catch up with Brian if you haven't already had the chance to do so. Good. Before we sing our final song and our regular blessing, I want to share some words from John O'Donoghue, who says this: "May I have the courage today to live the life that I would love, to postpone my dream no longer, but to do at last what I came here for, and waste my heart on fear no more." Thanks, Rosemary.
Ooh, this is good. Thank you for leaving the step down for me. I think our final hymn is "Here I Am, Lord." And I think you have to stand up for this because you need to be able to get a good big breath going. So you right, class? sea and sky. I have heard my people cry, all who dwell in dark and sin, my hand will say. I have made the stars of night, I will make the darkness bright. Who will bear my light to them? Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of snow and rain, I have borne my people's pain. I have wept for love of them, they turn away. I will break their hearts of stone, give them hearts for love alone. I will speak my word to them, whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you send me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of wind and flame, I will tend the poor and lame. I will set a feast for them, my hand will save. Honest bread I will provide, till their hearts are satisfied. I will give my life to them, whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. That's a stirring song. Radio. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of their hand. May God hold you in the palm of their hand.